Hello everybody, welcome back to the Pokemon Review series. In this episode we're going over the Dragonberry Specialist, Altaria. Now, Altaria, very bizarre Pokemon and not really that great in the meta. I'll start it off by saying that, but let's just get exactly why that is. So, Altaria, dozing type as is typical for dragon type berries. Now, something very interesting is that it evolves from Swablu, which is slumbering type, and flying type. So this was actually the first example. It and Tyranitar were the first two Pokemon in the game that evolved. I might be forgetting one, but I know for a fact that these two at least were the examples of Pokemon that changed their typing upon evolution. And that was the case with the Altaria, that was the case with the Tyranitar. And Altaria picked up the Dragonberry, which at the time, it was the only dragon Pokemon in the entire game. So that see X number of dragon-type Pokemon badge, yeah, that was pretty much, nobody had that badge, like, at any difficult high level, because it was this guy. And to this day, it is still just Altaria and the Dragonite line. There's some very interesting comparisons to be had there. But, okay, ahead of myself. So, what's going on with the Altaria with the berry specialty? Well, it's got Charge Energy, yes, as is what I like to say is one of the worst main skills for berry specialists. They don't really need it because they stick on the team the whole time. They ride out through the night, so they're never really having energy issues anyway, because you just kind of always have them there if you're running a berry specialist. And if you're not always having them there, then you're swapping them off the team during the day when they're draining the energy. So, you really only throw them on the team at nighttime, and because of that, Charge Energy S is just kind of a waste of a skill slot, in my opinion, on the berry specialists. So, its skill trigger rate, while that is decently high, doesn't really matter all that much because it's contributing kind of to a useless skill. And unfortunately for it being a berry specialist, and also the berry specialist of the strongest berry. If you look at all the berries in the game, Yachi Berry, the one for dragon-type berries, is the strongest by a long shot. At base value, it's got 35 value, which should be something that's going for the Altaria, because the second highest one is the Steel Berry with 33, then down to 31, or 32 with the Chesto Berry and the Ross Berry. Like, each other one, there's only a difference of 1 value. With the Yachi Berry, they made that a difference of 2, which isn't really that big of a difference when you're looking, like when you're thinking, oh, 1 versus 2, what's the big difference there? Well, the big difference there is that we're talking about at the base value, and every level up increases that berry strength by a percentage. So, having 2 higher at base value, that base value is being added at every level. So, it's significantly stronger, and I think that's why, with the first Dragonberry Specialist, they made it so bad. So, yeah. Additionally, because it is a berry specialist that relies on very strong berries, the strongest berry, in fact, for its procs, and a slow rate to be balanced. Unfortunately, they made this thing so gosh darn slow that it's effectively not useful in any capacity, and currently lacking an island. There's really nothing going for it. Now, let me pull up a quick little infographic here. Of the berry specialists for its island, if they ever do release an island for the Altaria, we can see that it's not even the best at its island. It is outperformed by Butterfree. If the final island turns out to be Bug, Dragon, Poison. So, even though it's got the strongest berry, it is so gosh darn slow, being 1 hour, 1 minute, and 40 seconds. That is one of the slowest speed tiers for fully evolved Pokemon. I think some of the only slower fully evolved Pokemon are like the Sudowoodo, I know is slower. Let's see. I'll pull up my favorite speed tier infographic as well. Now, keep in mind, this infographic is a little outdated. It's missing some Pokemon, but all the information about speed is correct for the Pokemon that are on here. You can see that the Altaria is down in 3,700, right alongside the Arbok. It's significantly better than the Arbok because it's got a stronger berry, but it's just that much Um, it's not that much better, but the only slower Pokemon that are up here, yeah, the only slower fully evolved Pokemon are Sudowoodo, you can see right here, and then Slowbro and Slacking. 3 Pokemon that are fully evolved that are slower than the Altaria. And if you know anything about berry specialists, the single most important factor to their viability, the single most important factors, I guess, are their berry strength and their speed. And if their speed is bad, they're just never going to do well as a berry specialist. And that's kind of where the Altaria is sitting. I think a lot of people had a lot of hype for this thing just because of how strong berry... Like, people saw the Dragon Berry strength and were like, whoa, that's awesome. That they kind of ignored this number. The fact that it takes longer than an hour to proc a single help. When it's on minimum energy, that is. This isn't the effective speed. And it's also the level 1 speed, so it's going to be taking a lot less time than an hour. But if you're running with the level 1 Altaria, which I don't even know how you get that, at 0% energy, it's going to take more than an hour to proc a single help. So, yeah. And something that's a very interesting comparison to be had about the Altaria is to the Dragonite. Now, Dragonite with Berry Finding S, there's a very interesting thing here. So, Dragonite has a speed of, as you can see here, 2,600. Altaria has a speed of 3,700. And that 3,700 divided by the 2,600 is about 1.42. Now, that's very important to keep in mind because a berry specialist with Berry Finding S produces 3 berries to a ingredient specialist with Berry Finding S producing 2. A 3-to-2 ratio, which is a value of 1.5. If this number was 1.5, they would produce the same amount of berries should they have the Berry Finding S subskill. This is, I believe, the closest example we have of that ratio coming to 1.5, comparing the frequencies of any berry specialist to an ingredient specialist in the game, which means Dragonite is actually really comparable to Altaria for berry production, and if you have the space in your pot for filler ingredients, given that the Dragonite's ingredients are so strong, it has really strong ingredient procs, it's actually better at raw strength, even with Dragon Favored Berry, because that difference between their berry production, it's there, don't get me wrong, but it's so slight that this tremendous difference in the ingredient value just makes the Dragonite come out on top. Now, one other thing that's unfortunate for the Altaria is because it is a slow berry specialist that relies on strong berries, you'd want to see as few of those berries as possible being eaten up by ingredient spawns. And it's got a 25.8% ingredient rate. That is tremendously high, which is the exact opposite of what we want to see. And its ingredients, egg, soybean, apple. Excuse me, I actually haven't even looked into this. Egg, soybean, apple. Eggs, I mean, it's one of the only way to get eggs, so that's kind of nice if you're targeting the flower gift macarons. Soybeans are a pretty meta-relevant ingredient, being in the Ninja Salad, the Ninja Curry, and the Hidden Power Perk-Up Stew. And apples are also decent, being in a lot of the desserts, but there's really nothing that takes all 3 of them, from what I'm seeing here. I guess you could use apples and eggs in gluttony potato salad, but that's not a very good meal. So, overall, it just doesn't have ingredient synergy either. It's just a poor Pokemon, and you don't really want its ingredients at all. The lower that number, the better. And there is a way to minimize that by forcing it to Sneaky Snack. But here's an interesting comparison. So, the Dragonite, because its ingredients are just that much stronger, it actually comes out on top when considering Dragon Berry, raw value output, and everything. And also, this is giving them ingredient finding down. I forgot about that. I gave them the ingredient finding down nature just to make it more favorable to the Altaria, because one of the things hurting the Altaria is its high ingredient rate. And that's one of the things that's helping the Dragonite. So I was like, what if we nerf that? Still significantly better on the Dragonite, despite the fact that it is the ingredient specialist and we're looking at berry output. Now, one could make the claim that, oh, but you can always sneaky snack. And normally I advise against sneaky snacking in most circumstances because you lose out on the skill, and oftentimes the skill has a lot of value that you're not noticing at surface level. However, in this case, I discussed how the Altaria's skill doesn't really matter all that much. So what if we tried sneaky snacking with these guys? For comparison's sake. And even when sneaky snacking, sure, the Altaria does come out on top because you are just looking at raw berry output, which, as we discussed, the Altaria is ever so slightly above that 1.5 ratio. It's at 1.42. So it does come out on top then, but you notice here, this Altaria, 59k, is still less than collecting on the Dragonite. So it's just never going to be the better berry specialist. And despite having the berry specialty, Dragonite does it better while also being good at ingredients, which can be used in the pot, which can be used in... Herbs are a much better ingredient overall than eggs, which is wild to be saying, because before the release of coffee, I'm not sure that necessarily would have been the case, even though none of these coffee meals actually take herbs. But like Inferno Corn Keema Curry still finds relevance in the fact that it can be made with just like 2 Pokemon, like, and one of them being Dragonite. So it's just interesting because not very many people have this many eggs to be able to make this meal. Like, yes, and also this meal and this meal are about the same strength, but yet this meal can be made with just 2 ingredient specialists. Meanwhile, this one, you need to have that egg farmer to make enough of it, because even an Altaria with triple eggs is never going to even come close to making this meal, maybe even once a day, because it is just that stupidly slow. So, something else that I wanted to discuss, Swablu. Now, because it type changes, there always is a consideration of what if we ran its pre-evolution with a ribbon? Would it be a better flying berry specialist? And Swablu's working with the same sort of dealio. 1 hour, 10 minutes for speed, which is to be expected being a pre-evolution of Altaria, who's also slow. And if you make the comparison of it to the other flying type Pokemon in the game, there aren't that many flying types. That's one very interesting thing about this game. If you compare it to the Dodrio, it doesn't even come close, and this is with the ribbon, by the way. And even compared to the ingredient specialists with Berry Fighting S, Cramorant and Delibird, if they have Berry Fighting S, they actually do better than the Swablu, who's actually a berry specialist. So it's not even worth thinking for the Swablu with a ribbon. It's just not good. And that's if we're going to Cyan Beach. I made that comparison as well. So, yeah, just Altaria's sad. I don't even know what to comment about it. Other than that, if you really want to hunt it because it's your favorite Pokemon or something like that, which, no shame there, then Lapis Lakeside is obviously the place to go. Always marketed as the place for dragon-type Pokemon. You can also find it at Snowdrop. I think that's primarily just because it was released before Lapis was a thing and they wanted it to exist. If you want Swablu, though, it's also at Greengrass, but if you really want a good one, that's not where you're going to want to hunt it. You should never be hunting anything at Greengrass, because there aren't any Greengrass exclusives at this point, if I'm right. Because before it was just Magnezone was the only Greengrass exclusive, but now we have Old Gold Power Plant, so there's nothing that should be hunted at Greengrass, because the pool is just too watered down. If you want this, Snowdrop and Lapis is where to go. So, yeah. That's pretty much everything to be said about the Altaria. Very unfortunate Pokemon design in this game. And I'm hoping and praying that they one day give us a better Dragon Berry specialist, as they're doing with other types. They've given us 2 Fire-type Berry specialists, and just recently they made it so that we now have 2 Dark-type Berry specialists. I'm hoping that can one day be the case with Dragonberry Specialist. Not because I want to see this thing fall to the wayside, but because I think there's a lot of potential in Dragonberry, and there's so many cool dragons out there. And this is probably one of the less liked dragons in the Pokemon franchise. Anyway, if you have enjoyed and learned something, then please leave a like and subscribe. I always thank you guys for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.